Hi everyone, welcome to the Navigating Land Use workshop. This workshop will include a panel of recognized land use leaders to weigh in on guidance for neighborhood councils, land use committees. Topics will include the forthcoming housing element, various Department of City Planning initiatives, like the density, upzoning, transportation-oriented communities, the entitlement notification system, community design overlay districts, open land development, and how to link your community to meetings and documents, ways to discuss land use issues of local concern and engage your community. So we have a lot on our plate today. This workshop is being presented by the LA Planning Alliance. The future of the LA Planning Alliance will be made up of neighborhood councils, planning and land use committees, and that's mostly experts in the field of land use. Our panel today consists of these leaders in the field of land use. Carrie Sutkin, holding both a master's in urban planning at USC and a doctorate in planning and policy and development. Carrie worked with Gloria Molina's city council staff and later with Supervisor Molina as legislative and planning deputy, and finally field director. More recently, Carrie was elected as the first female president of the Elysian Valley Neighborhood Council and also is on the steering committee for ARC, the Alliance of River Communities. Next, we have Dick Platkin. Dick Platkin is a retired city planner with 30 plus years of experience working in the public sector, Seattle and Los Angeles, as well as the private and nonprofit sectors of Los Angeles. Since retiring from the LA City Planning Department, he has taught planning classes at the University of Southern California and Cal State University Northridge, consulted to many community groups in Los Angeles, and joined the boards of United Neighborhoods for Los Angeles, that's UN4LA, and the Planners Network. He also writes the weekly Planning Watch column on planning issues in Los Angeles for City Watch LA, and has edited 2 special issues of Progressive Planning, the Journal of the Planners Network. Next, we have Richard Larson, retired architect as director of production for John Parkinson Architects, who did the famous LA City Hall, Bullocks Wilshire and Union Station, and current board member of the Lincoln Heights Neighborhood Council. Richard is the chair emeritus for their Planning and Land Use Committee, as well as the Affordable Housing Ad Hoc called 5 Lots. You can also credit Richard for all these beautiful guitars behind me. I'm not at Guitar Center. I'm in his living room. And last but not least, we have Tom Williams. He is the LA-32 Neighborhood Council Director, retired President Citizens Coalition for a Safe Community member of the LA Planning Alliance and Association of Environmental Professionals. Tom is a 40-year LA City resident, has a PhD in geology and zoology, is experienced in archaeology, and worked for over 30 years in California Environmental Quality Act projects worldwide, and has been 15 plus years in engineering for urban and transportation projects worldwide. So we are going to start with Carrie. Carrie, are you here? Just want to make sure.
Hi, Judy. We have not been joined Carrie yet. I'm looking at the participants list. And oh, wait, actually, is that Eva? There she is, Carrie. Sorry about that. I didn't recognize the username.
Neighborhood Council name on.
Okay.
Okay.
Carrie, would you like to start?
Sure, I would. Thank you. Thank you. Nice to meet you, Judy, and hi, panelists, audience. Hi. Thanks for joining this morning. I'd like to start with a slideshow just to kind of guide me through this a little. I have it. I can do a screen share, or if you guys want to. Good. Perfect.
Okay.
That's it.
So we're on the second page here. Let me.
Okay. Okay. That's okay. Or whatever. Wanted to talk about the housing element, really, which is out for discussion right now, is a very big and important public policy document. And one of the concerns that a lot of the community neighborhood councils have is that there's a huge, what we perceive as an increase in density throughout the city. And we know that there's a housing crisis, but really the crisis is for the shortage of affordable housing, that's affordable for folks that are making median income, county median income. So what is the problem with density? Isn't density a good thing? I mean, if density is kind of a way for us to build more housing, what's the problem with it? So, environmentally, there's a lot of arguments about just focusing our development in the central city, in the urbanized areas, properties that have access to transportation. Shouldn't we be supporting new housing in these older areas that have access to the service? But on the one hand, it seems like a great idea, but on the other hand, some of our older neighborhoods don't have adequate services currently. There's a lot of overcrowding. We have issues with our parks and sidewalks and access to schools. And so maybe density isn't, all that it's cracked up to be. Should we be approving density and dense housing that's very expensive, that our local residents, family members, our next generation of Angelenos won't be able to afford? And if density is an option that we need to look at for adding housing, maybe we need to really rethink how we work the density bonus and how we incentivize affordable housing and not subsidize market rate housing.
Should I go to the next page, Carrie?
Please. Okay. So where is our affordable housing? We are short of affordable housing. We know that we have homeless people on the streets throughout our city. We know that there are folks that are waiting on Section 8 waiting lists, and they've been waiting for a long time. Over 500,000 people waiting on lists for Section 8 vouchers that would help them get into affordable apartments. What's interesting about this new housing element is that it actually really starts to address the overcrowding that's caused by expensive housing and expensive apartments and larger families and small units. And so the city is now beginning to actually admit that we have this overcrowding issue and that they need to build housing for all income levels. We have a huge rent burden on Angelenos because rent is so high. And so what I would like to kind of ask you to consider is maybe some of our density bonus programs aren't actually kind of providing density for the wrong kind of housing that we're looking. And what we need so much is housing that folks that make $70,000 a year, that's a median income for a family of 4, or 50,000 or 35,000 even a year. And so my argument would be that we really need to look at inclusionary zoning to require a percentage of low-income affordable housing that goes into all new development, and then from there kind of work a density bonus program so that we're really only providing subsidies and densities for housing that we need the most for folks that are earning, again, an average income below median. Okay, so how did we get here? Like today we're looking at a housing element and the staff is asking us, do we want to support inclusionary housing? Well, inclusionary housing actually is not a new idea in Los Angeles, and I was involved in a specific plan. I was a very junior planning deputy. I just started working for Gloria. Actually, the plan was already wrapping up, but it was a very interesting specific plan. Unfortunately, it was changed at the end of 2009 due to a lawsuit, but the city actually required inclusionary zoning for the private property owners in the Central City West specific plan area, which is just west of downtown. And there were replacement requirements for low-income housing that had been taken down. There was relocation requirements for low-income tenants that were impacted by the acquisition for new development. There were nonprofits encouraged to come. There was a housing trust fund and the inclusionary housing until 2007, when big developer that's doing a lot of housing downtown. You've probably seen a lot of those Italian ornate things hugging the freeways. He sued the city and challenged the Central City West inclusionary zoning plan, and he did win. But in 2015, the California Supreme Court approved the legality of inclusionary zoning, sustaining it in the city of San Jose. So this is an idea that city planning staff has been shopping around inclusionary zoning, and I think it's definitely time. Okay, next slide, please. So urban infill is like a kind of a very simple housing strategy, but I think it's really very important. I think one of my colleagues later might be talking about some vacant lots, but what I was just impressed with is over the past 3 years with this housing crisis, quote, housing crisis, and where developers have just decided that, you know, multifamily housing is good to go, and the city has approved it as well. And so here's a couple of spots that were just small, you know, restaurants, and they've been redeveloped as very large multifamily housing. The project on the right-hand side was the old Metropolitan Water District building, which has been converted into housing many different times, many different types of housing. Okay, next slide. So these properties are valuable because they are located at good locations, and they're valuable for the developers, especially because the city is really approving almost every entitlement request that's coming in. Now, this is in particular of interest to me because this is the neighborhood council, the neighborhood where I live. This is in Elysian Valley. And up until 2004, the industrial properties did not allow housing at all. And then the developers met and organized with the city. I think they were even considering creating a redevelopment area at this time. And so they instead landed on a community plan update that was just very expedited and only affected the industrially zoned properties where the landlords were interested in building housing. And so the city came through and did a real quick update, community plan update, zone change, which would allow from industrial, changed it to a commercial manufacturing with a Q condition. So this is, the Q condition specified that there shall be an affordable housing component, because this in Elysian Valley, we're very divided. There's about 60% of our residents are renters and working class incomes. We're not a rich community, and yet it's been Elysian Valley, Frogtown has been a real dream for gentrifiers and redevelopers. And so we're trying to understand, you know, how is it that we keep losing affordable housing in Elysian Valley and we're not getting any new affordable housing? And so this was just one of the problems that I discovered when the city went and updated our community plan. They put this minimum size unit of 1,200 square feet, which is actually pretty large in our community. The average size of our houses here are about 700 square feet. So by changing the zoning and requiring these large size units, it actually, you can imagine, amped up the price tremendously and is in fact not affordable for our residents. This is in construction right now. This is a very current photo. Okay, next, thank you. And here's some other projects that receive density bonuses throughout the city, and yet they are luxury multifamily units. The one in the dark is right along Riverside Drive. That's in our neighborhood. And if you see, those are like single family homes plus a garage that's an ADU. It's in front of the building, not above it. And those aren't even on the market yet, but we know that those are over $1 million. That's right on Riverside Drive, right near the Stadium Way. And Larchmont and Melrose, you see these other two multifamily projects on the right-hand side. Also billed as luxury apartments, very secured from the street, private parking, private access. And again, I mean, it just goes to show that there's a demand for housing, but when the developers have no limit on prices, you know, you get some very expensive products. And it's furthering the crisis of lack of affordable housing in our area and taking these sites that are supposed to be accessible for working people who might ride the bus, who might be working downtown or working in Central City, and adding a new kind of housing and a new kind of tenant. And we're not sure if that's really an equity, if those are equity programs. So I submitted a letter to the city on the housing element. There's thousands and thousands of pages, but I just wanted them to hear my concerns. Our neighborhood council was unable to approve the whole letter. The comment period is still open right now, and I would urge people on this call that are interested in affordable housing and housing policies and housing projects to take a look at the webpage under LA City Housing Element and consider just some recommendations that we need. So I'm just a quick summary here for low-income housing. Of course, it starts at helping the homeless and the people most at risk of being homeless. Simply at a neighborhood council level, we've had neighborhood councils in our area that have worked to provide safe overnight housing with showers in a safe public parking lot at nighttime. Some of our groups work to increase transitional and shelter beds for cold, wet weather. That is an absolute critical crisis. I can't talk about low-income housing without mentioning the need for those emergency shelter beds. I know that's not a great long-term solution, but in the meantime, as we roll around to winter, imagine 45,000 people living on the streets. And also, I think it's very important for neighborhood councils and leaders like you to work with your city council people and city departments, the mayor's office, to identify publicly owned parcels that you think are underutilized that might offer opportunity for different kinds of housing, from emergency housing to other kind, multifamily housing. But I think most importantly, the message that I wanted to leave with you today is that we really need to define that affordable housing and really be critical of our housing element and our housing policies that kind of talk about affordable housing, but deep down are not producing housing at levels, at rent levels that people can really afford where they need them. So, I mean, I don't have the answers to that. If I did, I'd probably be not on this panel, but I just wanted to encourage you again, if you're in my audience, neighborhood council people or activists, there's a lot of research that we need to do on almost every single project, as they come in. Hopefully we would know about them in advance, but to really evaluate if these density bonuses are providing scarce housing for low-income families. That was the intent. That is the original purpose of the density bonus program. If you read the Sacramento state ordinance, it only refers to affordable housing, and the bonus for density is only granted when those units are for affordable income levels. That's below median income. So I would urge the city also to please reevaluate your density bonus program. It's not producing affordable units. It's producing high density, high value units that are really starting to not only impact the urban areas, our city streets, but might actually take up so much of the subsidy that the city provides for providing services. These density bonuses are, it's a density higher than the city services currently provide. So if we're gonna provide density bonuses, again, the policy, the philosophy behind these programs has always been, it's worth it because you're helping a low-income family. It's worth it because we need low-income workers and students and mixed communities to all live together in the city and not to have poor people living hundreds of miles out of town. That doesn't work. So, whoa, is that it? I didn't get to is my time? I just wanted the target decision makers. Maybe we could bring it up later under action plan. Okay.
Definitely. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Am I taking your place?
Okay. Thank you. Okay. The technical difficulties here. Thank you, Carrie, for that very concise presentation. And if you have any any resources or links, please post it in the chat so our attendees can access it or save it for later. Now I'm going to, pardon?
If there's any questions, same thing. Please send those in.
Yeah.
A link.
And please type into the chat or raise your hand if you have any questions, because now I'm going to open it up for questions to the floor. So anyone can ask a question. And actually, since no one has formulated their question yet, I did have a question.
Sure.
Can you talk a little bit more about the bonus programs? I'm not super familiar with it, but I'm interested to know what else it entails. Why is it called a bonus, and why?
Okay. Okay, that's a good question. It's called a bonus because they're getting something, a density, which density is basically space that you're allowed to develop more than what you would be normally be allowed. So it's beyond what's permitted. Normally we call those entitlements. Is you're coming and you're asking for some right to develop beyond what the property that you purchased allows. And most people, when they buy their home or they buy a property, they never think of changing the use or the zone because that's not what's allowed. And that's pretty much the way, you know, planners are supposed to kind of respect the existing community plans and not give bonuses or changes to entitlements. And so that's a very controversial question, actually, that you asked, Judy. You know, why are we giving bonuses? Why are we allowing changes in entitlements, especially if it's not helping, you know, our biggest social issue right now, which is the lack of affordable housing.
Okay, I have a question from Brenda V.
Okay.
Let me unmute you.
Hi.
Go.
So I always ask the developer to, you know, think about a little bit more affordable, I mean, low income units, but they never do. And it's a constant struggle, like to squeeze at least one. and I think they should go to local nonprofits and see if they could get the word out for the low income units. But that's a problem right here in Echo Park. It's it's a struggle.
Thank you. I know. And I was thinking, you know, if there was someone on the planning, from the planning department that was on this call, they always, you know, challenge the idea that density bonuses should serve, you know, low income. And they just say, well, the developers refuse. The developers won't do it. There's not enough profit for them, which is exactly what you're saying, Brenda. And it's, I just don't think that's the way to get low income housing. We need hundreds of thousands of units. It's been going on. I know I came to LA, I was a graduate student in the 80s. This was the biggest issue in graduate school. Everybody wanted to study housing and homeless policy and nonprofits. That was like early, how do we build affordable housing for people? And it's just, the nonprofit sector cannot do enough, even though I agree with you, Brenda, that's like it's a beautiful partnership. But I just feel that the city policy needs to require more from private developers. They're getting a bonus. That's the point. They're asking for special consideration, things that add millions of dollars in value to their property. If they're only normally allowed to build 10 units and they get to build 20, that's a big profit. So I'm with you, Brenda. I just think that all of that extra density should be for low income housing. All density bonus requests. I mean, that's my argument. It's a little radical, but I think we have to invert the way we're looking at the problem, and the density bonus program needs to help us solve the problem. And instead, I think it's making it worse.
Okay, we have question from Laura Myers. Laura, you need to unmute yourself. Okay, until Laura is able to unmute herself, I will pass it on to Robin.
Hi, this is Robin Rudisell, Coastal San Pedro Neighborhood Council. And I'm so with you on this, and you're expressing it so well. You know, one of the priorities of the housing element is to prevent displacement and protect Angelinos. And one of the things you just said was that we keep losing affordable housing as a result of these projects, and we're not getting new housing or the right type of new housing. And it struck me that if we can get through to the mayor, you know, I see these commissioners, whether it's area planning commissioner or a city planning commission, continue to just rubber stamp these projects, no matter how egregious the bonuses are and how hard communities work to communicate to them that how far astray they've gone from the community plans, etc. Maybe if there's a way to make an effort to get to the mayor who appoints those commissioners and can, you know, give them some guidance on this, especially with it becoming such a priority with the new housing element. And I'd love to hear your ideas on that if you think.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I mean, that's why I like to come to these kinds of events, because I think they might be listening. But, you know, actually at this point, yeah, I work with a lot of people that believe that those planning commissioners should be elected. I'm not sure if I agree, but I think I agree that there's a problem that the mayor gets to appoint all of those planning commissioners, and they kind of, you know, they're all kind of consistent in their policy, and they don't, like in the old days, there used to be, I remember several people appointed the commissioners. There were always renters, there were always advocates, you know, it was a combination. We're not getting that so much now. So actually, Robin, my suggestion is to kind of work, it's tricky, but actually the housing element, it's a big document. The state is really watching LA. And I really feel, I'm not talking about a lawsuit or anything, but I'm just saying I just feel that the planning staff, the housing staff knows what's missing. But there is totally a disconnect, you're right, between kind of what we know and what the city documents commit us to, if you will, or the policies. So I think it is the mayor, but I think it's also the city council. The city council has a housing committee that's supposed to meet monthly. They've canceled their meetings, at least during COVID, and we're all meeting on you know, Zoom. So the city council, and I think the city council and the mayor together, we need to kind of like get them all in the same room and really talk about the affordability issue. It is crazy. I think they all know philosophically density bonuses are for low income housing, and yet maybe we just need to keep putting the numbers up and that's what this planning staff actually has been doing. That they've really looked at the number of units that they've ended up with that were for fair market versus low income, and there's a huge disconnect. And so it's kind of a numbers game. That's why I'm kind of like hoping that maybe the housing element called for 3 years of an implementation strategy with our city and our city decision makers and nonprofits. I think we need to like work on this tomorrow, really, Robin. The mayor may not be around tomorrow, his staff may not be around, but like the housing committee, the city council, there's a HCID director, apparently there's a new housing director, there's a planning director, there's a lot of staff in the city whose job it is to fix this problem too. So work with me.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I do have many people with lots of questions, including Philip, who types a question to me. But in the interest of time, and so we can have time for my other 3 panelists, I'm going to move on. And I did write Leslie, Karen, Laura, Marianne, and Philip. I wrote your names down, so maybe we can come back to you afterwards if there is time. My next panelist is Dick Platkin, former city planner associate and current writer for land use issues with City Watch LA. He will present on upzoning. Dick?
Okay. Let me, I'm going to try to share a screen. What's happening here?
Go ahead, Dick. I can do it, or if you want to.
Okay, there. Okay. Normally I don't use a script, but this time I have so many points to make, I'm going to do it. As the introduction indicated, I am a retired city planner. I've mostly been active in local groups, but not the neighborhood council in the Beverly Fairfax neighborhood, which is also near Miracle Mile. I'm also on the board of United Neighborhoods for LA, and this is an umbrella organization that would like to represent local communities that are critical of planned projects. That means discretionary projects, and they're also give a lot of scrutiny to plans and ordinances that the city hall has initiated. And I often address these topics in my column in City Watch, which comes out weekly. One of the topics that I try to debunk a lot is the idea that trickle-down economics can fix homelessness, increase transit ridership, and reduce climate change in LA. And the Department of City Planning, the City Council, and the Los Angeles Times contend that Los Angeles can cure its housing crisis, which is expressed as out-migration, rent gouging, overcrowding, people living in cars, and homelessness by densifying the city's zoning laws, which means deregulating the zoning laws. Their contention is that giveaways to investors, which means they have more capacity and more zoning for their existing properties, will encourage them to build more housing, and this will induce a housing boom, which will then reduce rents by supply and demand and filtering. And as I've argued many times, these claims don't have a shred of evidence behind them. This is what the LA Times wrote. Local zoning in too many cities severely restricts sites for denser housing, including apartments and townhomes. I'll show you why this is incorrect for LA. And this is how LA's paper of record recycles the claim that homelessness mostly results from a housing shortage, not a money shortage for those priced out of housing, as well as the defunding of public housing programs. Public housing programs in Europe are called social housing programs, but in the United States, the term historically has been public housing. Yeah. And this is the same message that the Department of City Planning has presented in its public outreach materials for the housing element and for the community plan seminars and webinars. City planning never uses the term upzoning, even though that's the technical term, and they obfuscate what's going on by the term rezoning, and you can see this in many of the programs in the draft housing element. And I quote the most critical one, which is program 121. The rezoning program is anticipated to be implemented through a number of work efforts, including updates to up to 16 community plans. I think it might actually be 17 to specific plans, downtown plans, as well as at least one citywide ordinance that will create additional zoning capacity through an expansion of affordable housing incentive programs, which Carrie already spoke about. I think there are at least 4 problems with the take that the LA Times gives and the city planning gives and some advocacy organization gives. And basically what they want is deregulation, which they call upzoning, or they call rezoning. I call it upzoning. And they want to give density bonuses, which is a way to privatize what used to be low-income housing for the low-income people by public housing. Public housing programs have been slashed or gutted or completely eliminated, and the result is we have privatized unsuccessfully, as Carrie pointed out, all of these quasi-public housing programs. This is the first reason why I don't think these arguments are correct. First of all, single-family housing no longer exists in LA, despite all the claims that so much of the land is devoted to single-family houses. That is simply not true. Homeowners can legally build a separate market rate 1,200 square foot senior accessory dwelling unit, essentially a second house in their backyard. And the only constraint is it can't be underneath power lines. So if you have a large backyard, you can add a second house legally of 1,200 square feet. You can also carve out part of your existing house for what's called a junior accessory dwelling unit. And you can roll a small house on wheels into your backyard. Together, This means that every single family house in LA could, well, almost everyone could essentially become 4 separate houses, a fourplex, an effective fourplex. The other thing is that Los Angeles does not have a shortage of zoning that automatically permits apartments. Every commercial zone in Los Angeles and 3 of the 6 manufacturing zones automatically permit R3 and R4 apartment buildings. No one has to ask for any zoning permits, any zoning waivers. If you have access to a commercial zone or 3 of the 6 manufacturing zones, you can build apartment houses. And this is what the general plan framework intended. All of these sites are on transit corridors, so they already have accessory transit, which means they already qualify for the density bonuses that Carrie spoke about. This means that LA's existing zoning could, if it were built out, allow 7.2 million people, and the city now has 3.9 million people. This is the calculations that are published online by the planning department for the environmental impacts report for the general plan element framework. And if you add the ordinances that allow accessory dwelling units and density bonuses, the real build-out population would be 9 million people, which is more than twice the existing population. Of course, if this happened, the city's infrastructure and public services they would all be blown up. I mean, there's no way that they can't handle 3.9 million people. So the idea that you could increase the city by millions, legally increase the city by millions of people is erroneous. Also, we should point out that the transit-oriented guidelines allow developers to voluntarily double the building size of a building called floor area ratio and density, and they can reduce on-site parking. There's no notices, no hearings, no determination letters, no appeals. It's just done behind the scenes administratively as a ministerial approval by the Department of City Planning. The third problem is there is no lack of rental housing. I was just on another panel in which someone from Abundant Housing said, the problem we have, LA's housing crisis comes from there's a shortage of housing. Well, this is simply nonsense. There might be a shortage of homes because the price of homes is shot up as there's a limited supply and there's lots of demand, but there's no shortage of rental housing. I just checked the other day for the apartment rental site, and there's many sites. There are now in LA 25,000 vacant apartments that anybody with enough money could rent. Furthermore, I think this is an undercount because lots of landlords don't go to rental services to rent it. They just put up a sign. So the real number is probably closer to 35 or even 50,000 vacant apartments. So why is it that people don't rent these apartments? Well, I think it's they don't have enough money. And LA's official legal minimum wage over here right now, I'll put the cursor there, is $15 an hour. But you need to have $37 an hour to afford the typical 2-bedroom apartment in LA. And if you go to some of the more popular neighborhoods, like along Miracle Mile, Beverly, Fairfax, where I live, you'd have to have more than $37 to rent a 2-bedroom apartment. And if you would like to buy a house, and we're talking a basic house, a starter house, you need to have an annual salary, according to Curb to LA, of $127,000. And I calculated this means $61 an hour. So in other words, the minimum wage would need to be quadrupled in Los Angeles for the average person to be able to buy a house. It isn't that they don't, it isn't that, well, the houses are short, but the main problem is a lack of money, not a lack of housing. The fourth problem, which Carrie also talked about, is that upzoning rarely produces affordable housing. Upzoning, for those who don't know it, when you increase the density or the types of uses on a property, the price goes up. The value of the house goes up. If developers want to acquire it, if they give letters, I mean, I and most other people who live in a house regularly gets unsolicited offers to buy our house. These are from developers and realtors who represent the developers. They would want to build market housing if they could get access to it. And if they build market housing, it is expensive housing because their business models require them to have expensive housing. So there is no mystery to explain the gap between vacant housing and those who need a place to live. And the best report that I've seen is produced by a group called SAGE and ACCE and the law school at UCLA. It's called the Vacancy Report. And I have one small quotation from it. And anybody, I have the link here and we'll send, anybody can access this report. We are not building nearly enough affordable housing. Though luxury construction is booming, construction of affordable housing is not. Against the backdrop of mass evictions and displacement, a persistent lack of deeply affordable housing construction has led to a shortfall of more than 500,000 affordable units. The LA Times says the number is actually 600,000. The gap between the housing that is most needed and the housing that is actually being built continues to widen, intensifying an unprecedented and affordable housing crisis. So you might ask, if developers are responding to need, why is there such a massive unmet need for affordable housing? The demand is there. If the law of supply and demand work, developers would be building housing for these 500,000 or 600,000 people. It's simple. It's quote unquote the law of supply and demand. But the problem is that real estate investors know they get the highest rate of return for market rate apartments built in neighborhoods near employment, recreation, and shopping venues, which means the areas that have seen the most development in recent years, which is Koreatown, Westlake, downtown Los Angeles, Miracle Mile, Beverly Fairfax, the area around the Beverly Center, Hollywood, Valley Village, Warner Center. These are the hot neighborhoods in LA. This is where developers want to develop. This is where investors want to invest because they know they will get the profits that they want. And the culprit is not a lack of zoning in LA. The culprit is their business model. Like all investors, they want to maximize their profits, which also explains why they lobby for upzoning and related zoning giveaways. If anybody wants a copy of my script, I'm happy to do it. You can send me an email at rhplatkin@gmail.com. I'll enter it into the chat, and I'll see if there's some way I can upload this document into the chat as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dick. Okay, so can we close that window?
Do you want me to see if I can put it into the chat?
Yeah, and can you also close your window so we can go back to full screen? Your document.
There we go.
There we go. Thank you. Okay, so who has a question? Laura, we missed you from the previous round. I'm not sure if Dick can answer any of your questions or if you'd like to pass it back to.
Well, if you're able to hear me.
Yes,
We can hear you fine.
now.
Yeah, it could be to the entire panel and just ponder it maybe to the end. We're beginning to see on density bonus and TOC projects, not just, sorry for those who aren't really technical, not just on menu plus off menu incentives, but then requests for additional incentives and waivers of development standards and waivers from, for example, redevelopment plans. So we have a case, sadly, on my own block, so I got recused out of the neighborhood council, which may give me a better voice, where it's 7 stories, like no open space at the end, no setbacks, a 5-foot setback at the rear, lots and lots of waivers. And it totals up to, in the underlying application, 19 requests for waivers. And then that's separate and apart from the redevelopment plan. So I don't even know what to do with that, because it sounds like some of the state laws are saying you still have to have a good reason to turn a project down. So, how are we responding to that? I don't know if that's just a Dick question or.
Well, I can answer it real quickly. At the lower level, the density bonus, first of all, most of the city is included in the transit-oriented communities. It's almost
Right.
every parcel between the downtown and the 405 below the Hollywood Hills. It's everything in South Central Los Angeles on both sides of the Harbor Freeway, and it's most of East LA. And in the Valley, it's all the major north-south corridors plus Ventura Boulevard. At the lower levels, the Department of City Planning can automatically approve things like increasing density and reducing parking. There's no reason that a neighborhood council might even be aware of it.
Yeah.
Now, for other things like adding height by adding stories, you have to ask for a discretionary approval. But in the city of Los Angeles, almost every discretionary approval is approved. Over 90% of them historically are approved. And I think for the discretionary approvals for density bonuses, it's probably 100% that are approved. I don't think I've ever heard of a TOC discretionary request that has ever been denied by the Department of City Planning. Maybe Carrie knows, but I've never heard of one.
I was gonna say, I mean, you can write a lot of letters, lady, but I've never seen a density bonus denied either.
Right. Well, we got a half denial recently, but it was useless. And then but the question is, where does it go too far when they're also asking for waivers? You know, I mean, in other words, it's not on any menu.
Well, no, they can only ask for on menu and off menu. The TOC guidelines clearly indicate, but I think there's 3 on menu things that can be granted automatically, and there's at least 6 off menu things, like they can have the size of the yards, yard coverage, transitional height. They can have all of that reduced. So they don't have an infinite list, but they have enough lists from all the restrictions in zoning that any developer who wants can build exactly what he wants, independent of what the zones of the city require. That's why we call it deregulation. It's deregulating zoning.
So can I ask you a question, Dick? Do you see them ever turning that around and making it about just granting the entitlement based on affordable units?
Capital in Maine, a very good online publication, had one of its reporters try to do an independent review of the databases of where the affordable units are. She said there are vast gaps in the online registry of the available units. So if you think you are low income and you want to find low income TOC housing, it's very inaccurate. And I also went to the Housing and Community Investment Department website. According to their website, their registry, there is not one available TOC unit in the entire city of Los Angeles, which we know is nonsense. And they say either every TOC project has a wait list, which a lot of them might have a wait list, or they're under construction. And if you are a landlord and you want to know if the people who would like to rent from you are qualified, if they've been vetted as a low income tenant, there is no database. There's no way you can do it. So that means landlords can skirt the law, or they can simply make a claim everybody's low income.
Right.
And the other problem is no one from HCID ever physically inspects a TOC unit. No one ever goes out. And in other cities like New York, they do. And New York also has mandatory inclusionary housing. This is strictly voluntary housing, and the laws are not enforced. A lot of times the TOC bonuses simply lead to flipping. The property becomes more valuable because the zoning has been changed, and property owners flip it.
So is that just literally on purpose or not a gap in oversight and administrative responsibility?
Well, people have raised these points so many times that I can't believe that it's just an oversight. I think it's deliberate. That's my take. I think it's deliberate loopholes. I mean, the HCID could send inspectors out. I don't know why they don't. They do it in other cities. They could keep an accurate registry. They don't. I don't think that there's any technical reason why these things couldn't happen. It's a choice by the city of LA. I mean, there is grounds for incompetence. I mean, having worked at City Hall, I know there is incompetence, but I don't think that's the main reason.
Okay, I'm going to move us on to our next segment. Hopefully we can continue this conversation because I have burning questions from Philip and from Marianne King. Our next speaker is the LA Planning Alliance founder, Richard Larson, Chair Emeritus of the Lincoln Heights Land Use and the 5 Lots Ad Hoc Committees, who speaks on community design overlays, future planning, and enforcing the Department of City Planning's declarations. Richard, please come to the virtual stage.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. This is a very exciting event citywide. We're reaching out to the neighborhood council system and all the various planning and land use committees and that are faced with all these challenges that we're talking about today, and also to stakeholders all over the city who want answers to some of the questions that they feel should be asked. And so that's why we're hosting this workshop today. We were very fortunate for the LA Congress to see the value of what we're doing and to allow us to do that here today. So in terms of gathering information, let me share a couple of screens here. If the first step on this is to find out about ZEMIS, which I'm going to put on the screen now. So if you go into ZEMIS, which is just simply zimas.com, you can type in, as you see here, a house address and a street name, and then hit go. Now, if you're going through the entitlement process, which is something that I'm going to speak about in a minute, you can just go right here to case numbers, and then instead of this screen that you're seeing here, you go to case numbers. So on the ZEMIS page, you can find all of the case numbers, and you can see what's going on with your within your neighborhood. So part of this process, let me back out of this for a second. Okay, so this is a typical email that comes out, and what you see here is divided by neighborhood. So you can look through this list of neighborhoods, find your neighborhood, and then you'll see an address, you'll see the council district number, you'll find a case number. You can click right on that case number and it will bring you to ZEMIS. There's a description of what this project is about and who the contact person is. So all the planning and land use people can simply contact this person and ask for information about this case number to bring that person to your planning and land use meeting and to find out what this entitlement is all about. And the letters here at the very end, HCA, CE, CDO, these all relate to certain processes within city planning that Dick could talk about if he was talking about this segment. So that's basically the process. You get these emails, you look at your neighborhood and what's going on, what's being planned for your neighborhood, and then you contact these people and schedule a presentation of this particular project so that the neighborhood council, the committee first can hear a presentation on this project and then vote on it, and then yay or nay, that particular entitlement is passed on to the general board meeting, and the presentation is made again by the proponent to the community, and then the community can watch their council in action discuss and vote on these entitlements. So that's basically the process. We could take some questions later, but let me show you something else here. Okay, great. So this particular presentation has a lot to do with a particular area of Los Angeles, which, like Dick was just saying, there's some hot spots, and this shows you that within a broader context, there's many things going on that may or may not show up in the entitlement system when you register for emails and you check out the case numbers and so forth. That's only just the beginning. So let me show you what else is involved here. This is a particular area surrounding the east side of Los Angeles. Here's an overall map of this is the LA River here, and we have Lincoln Heights, Boyle Heights, LA 32, downtown, Chinatown, we have Elysian Valley. So these are all the neighborhoods surrounding this area of great interest. So here we see there's a presentation where this is a rendering by the Bureau of Engineering, and you can see some of the other things that are being contemplated, the river master plan and so forth. And then there's other things that are going on, for instance, with multi-property, was talking about here. There's an address here on Fletcher where one property was purchased in the middle, and then additional properties were purchased, and then this became an infill project where we have now 17 small lot dwellings, each unit ranging from 1,500 to 2,000 square feet. And it begs the question, what else is going on around here? But that's one component that we have. When these new Bureau of Engineering and City of Los Angeles projects come along, like the Taylor Yard, we've already spent millions of dollars with the Rio de Los Angeles Park, and then suddenly in the vicinity pop up all these other projects, live, work, lofts, and so forth. Let's take a look at some of these other areas. So there was all these various bridges and so forth that popped up near this former the G2 yard, as it's called, and the city's going to take all of that land and put in islands, and you can see the list here. Groves and pavilions and all kinds of fabulous features for the local residents, but it also brings in challenges such as, where do all these people come from? And then you add into that, there's special interest groups. Like here on the right, you see there's a plan for the Arroyo Seco where you don't actually see much going on except a lot of greenery and what happened to all the people that live here. Also, there's the Coinfill Arroyo Seco plan, which is another overlay which allows density and height limits to be lifted for more density housing to be occurring. In the same vicinity, we have a clean water campus. They're going to re-guide the Arroyo Seco River, which is this whole tributary here that comes down into the LA River. So that's all going to change. And then there's the jail project, and there is the clean water campus, and there's new hotels and so forth sprouting up. And then we're getting into an area around Union Station where we have all these projects, all these numbers here, various things that are going on in this area. This is the piggyback yards here. And this is again the LA River, okay, and all of these other ancillary plans. So here's a little overview. In the center here, we have the new historic state park. We have the communities of Lincoln Heights and Boyle Heights and Solano Canyon. Elysian Valley is up here. Am I on the wrong side? Anyway, Chinatown, and this is Dodger Stadium, of course. So you're seeing an overall picture. So what's happening here? Well, we're going to have large-scale development occurring here because of the interest in this area. There's going to be a gondola over the historic park is being proposed, and none of this has any affordable housing in it from what the latest reports are. It will require a general plan amendment, and there's a little discussion here on what was the history of this area. So here's a little pop-up regarding the size of these proposals, and you can find all these on ZMIS, and in your own community you may start doing the same kind of thing. Have a map and show the size of these developments and where they're located, what impact they're going to have on your community. So looking at all these, we have, this is Pasadena Avenue, and it comes down here to North Broadway, and right now you can drive from here to downtown in about 4 minutes, but you add all these units in there, and how is this being handled with the infrastructure, and where are these people going to work, and where's the affordable housing, and those types of questions, which may or may not appear on the Zenith list. So what they did around here was, this is a community survey, which our local people, this was actually created outside of the neighborhood council system, a local 501c community benefit association came up with a survey where they were gathering information. So something like this might be done as well. I see there's some questions. Let me see if I can get through this quickly. Well, there's only a limited number of time to do this. And then getting back to the historic park, now there's all kinds of new projects going up here. We see 725 units on the West College Street, and we have businesses around there. So these are all new, entities that are popping up around where all these new projects are going. We also have the high-speed rail project where downtown is going to have a new loop going around the entire downtown area. A whole bunch of new rail lines that will be going over the 110 here, or the 101. This is the 110 back here. And basically the trains, instead of idling here at Union Station, part of the high-speed rail program, which is costing billions, will be that these trains will be able to circle and they won't be polluting in one little spot. But also right here, this is the site, and we have all these adjoining communities and so forth. And this will be impacting the William Mead homes. Like right behind them, they're taking the existing rail platform and raising it 25 feet in the air. So now we're going to have a 45-foot tall wall behind the William Mead homes. So it takes a little bit of investigating to look at these things. Also, the high-speed rail now which is passing on grade here at Main Street, they're going to have to build a 73-foot tall bridge, which is kind of interesting. This neighborhood here, you could come down these streets and get right on Main Street and get downtown or get over to the 5 freeway or whatever. Now you're on this kind of like, I call it Disneyland East, where part of the process is you have to go on this whole circuitous route here to get, you can only go east on Main Street here, on Main Street, and to get over to Daly Boulevard, where you might be able to get on the 5. But if you ended up down here at night, I mean, a lot of people would get confused. This is a UPS yard right here. It's one of their main truck shipping facilities, and you're going underneath the bridge here, and you're going, I don't know, it's very exciting. At any rate, also we have large institutions who have plans on what their futures exist, and those are either associated with LA County or other organizations, so you have to sort of investigate into other areas. It's kind of both inspiring and challenging for land use committees to think about the challenge that they all face in their individual communities when you start to link all of this stuff together. And that's really the idea behind the LA Planning Alliance, is that just as we're doing today, we would draw together our common interests and find topics that we can resonate on, and join our neighborhood councils together in supporting the alliance to dig further into what does this project entail, how does this address affordable housing, what part of this is under the housing element that Carrie was talking about, and what part of this is upzoning that Dick was talking about. And pretty soon here we're going to be hearing from Dr. Tom Williams on open land use. So anyway, getting to the end of this, I think I'm almost out of time.
You're out of time.
I am out of time. Okay, so let me just quickly wrap up here. We have an application for anybody who wants to join the neighborhood, the LA Los Angeles Planning Alliance. So this is a typical form that we could send to your neighborhood council. Just contact me at rwlarson@lhnc@gmail.com. We'll put that in the text, and that's about it. That's the presentation. And does anybody have any questions?
Actually, Richard, I'm going to move us on to Dr. Tom Tom Williams, so that we can not rush him through his presentation, and then we'll take questions if we have afterwards. Let's see. Okay, Today, we have LA Planning Alliance member Tom Williams speaking out about our precious open land. We have many communities with open lands, sometimes hillsides, that have become popular with developers, such as Elysian Valley. What impact will they have during and after construction? What can neighborhoods do with navigating these challenging projects? Tom?
Hi, do I have some slides available
Yes,
anywhere?
yes, I am.
I need slide one.
Hold on just a second. Let me get back to my screen sharing.
While you're doing that, open lands. Everybody else is concerned about densification and everything, and I'm on open lands. What is an open land? Basically, okay, we got open lands in LA. I come from the perception of 90032, LA 32 Neighborhood Council, Northeast LA, Council District 14, and open lands elsewhere. There's actually a lot of open land, which, how do you define the open land? Okay, vacant, unbuilt lands. They've been platted out by the Department of City Planning. They have paper streets. They have paper infrastructure easements, all on paper. They're zoned from anything from R1 to RE40. So there's a lot of different units available within the open lands. They're not public lands, they are private lands. And as a result, they are also paying property taxes and everything. They have paper streets. I became interested in it when the city engineer addressed the Board of Public Works as to providing money to build the infrastructure as plotted on Elephant Hill. Elephant Hill is one of our hills in LA 32 Neighborhood Council and has maybe 800 to 1,000 vacant open plots, which are all owned by somebody somewhere, and they're just waiting. Why do we have such? You can actually trace it back as to looking at, next slide, the next one. Oh, the one down in the corner.
One more?
Yeah. Hey, there you go. Elephant Hill is the big green area in the upper center, not that one, back. Elephant Hill is the big green spot. I live down by the orange spot on the right-hand side. The issue is, okay, now we're back. That green area on the right half is where I live. The green area in the middle, now we're, okay, stop on that, don't change it. Okay, the basic element is that there are means of navigating through LA. The two best means are the Google Earth Pro satellite images, which can take you back to about 1990, and at almost any scale, including street images, and it's free online. But get it so that it has the, might say, older sites also, because you can get satellite images back to 1990, 1985, but it gives you a start, and it also identifies where all the oak woodlands. The basic problem is that, why are they open? I live 6 miles from downtown LA. I can be in downtown LA on bus in 24 minutes. I am in a transit-oriented corridor, but we have over 1,000 plotted parcels that are vacant. Why are they still vacant? Well, we don't know. And we're kind of curious that there are other areas that also have vacant lots. Sometimes the vacant lots are owned by adjacent occupied lots, and that could be some of it. But it's a matter that through Google Earth and Zimus and some historic aerial photographs that I have access to, there are a lot of reasons why the land is vacant. We don't know why specifically, but right now it seems to be that nobody wants to build the infrastructure. And when a development was proposed on Elephant Hill with infrastructure being provided, the cost of it was so much that the owners of what is now Elephant Hill sold it off to the city of Los Angeles. Why? We're 6 miles from downtown LA, but we have another 1,000, 2,000 parcels available in Northeast LA. So we're quite concerned regarding what's going to happen in the Northeast LA community plan, how this is going to be developed into the housing element, which is being talked about right now. And in the background, we have maybe 2,000 parcels vacant. How does that impact upon the projections of population and households that have been made during the last 50 years? Because it hasn't been occupied for 50 years or more. There's no infrastructure. Therefore, whoever comes first has to build the infrastructure. Oh, how is that done? We don't know. And we're quite concerned regarding the Board of Public Works and the fact that paper streets, paper sewers, paper drains, paper curbs, paper sidewalks may be considered, but they're not being built. And so one of the elements that we have is how to get the infrastructure to support 2,000 vacant lots done. And that appears to be a major problem. So, okay, let's go to the last slide. Should be picture. Just for information, I am available. I am retired, but still active. So if you have any land use or environmental issues, questions, I'm your man, and my contact email is available. So I say, let's wrap it up that, okay, we need things in El Sereno to build houses, but we don't have the infrastructure to build anything on the parcels that have been plotted for over 50 years. So I'm quite concerned regarding how we're going to go forward here, but I'm also available. I've been helping people over in Eagle Rock, down in Harbor Gateway North, and a few other places. So, oh, by the way, I am president of the Citizens Coalition for a Safe Community, which was formed in 2008, and we fought and got the County of Los Angeles to deal with oil wells, which are now on Zimus. The Zimus maps show little red dots. If you click on those are oil wells. That's all.
Thank you, Dr.
Next.
Tom. Oh, Sorry. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Tom, for your presentation. We had a lot of good information today, and I'd like to quickly move on to some of our very patient questions, our patient attendees who had questions. So, Philip, you had a question. Are you there? Philip A?
Yes.
Hi, Philip. What was your question?
Okay, so which presentation are we speaking of?
The whole thing.
Yeah, the whole thing.
Okay, so the earlier we were having a presentation about inclusionary zoning.
Yeah.
And then we were having a presentation about the housing element. And so trying to combine these two together, Dick Platkin was talking about, in other words, we have all these different incentive programs and so forth. And the housing element update is explaining that our RENA for housing affordable to people with less than income of less than 120% AMI is 260,000 over the next 8 years, but we're only projecting to actually build 20% or about 51,000 of those. And so, and that's based on current, what they call current assumptions. And obviously inclusionary zoning is not one of the current assumptions. And I was, I guess this question is to Dick Platkin, is in your estimation, what do you think would make a difference in trying to reach closer to the 260,000 target versus the 51,000 that's currently expected?
Oh, okay. I think the real target is how do we find housing for the 500 to 600,000 people who would like Section 8 housing and cannot get it. I mean, that's the real housing gap in LA. I know I've seen this research in the housing element. I don't think there is any market tweaking that will do this. You can have all of the incentives to developers, but it doesn't address the problem that people are poor. And the research that I found, mostly from Curbed LA, which is a pro-real estate site, indicated that for the average 2-bedroom apartment, some neighborhoods would be more, some might be less, would be $37 an hour. So we have to increase the amount of money that people have who are priced out of housing, who have to double up, have to live in their cars, live on the streets, have to moved out of LA. I mean, LA has lost 100,000 people in the last 4 years by population people leaving. And the other program that I think is undeniable is that we have to refund HUD's programs for public housing and the CRA programs for public housing. The CRA, before it was dissolved in the year 2011, had to dedicate 20% of its budgets. These are all the redevelopment agencies in California. And for those people who think that you can somehow have the private sector supplant the public sector in providing low-income housing, which I don't think is possible, the model would be mandatory inclusionary housing. This is what they have in New York City. And I think the threshold is 25% of the housing in all new projects in New York City have to be low income, and they are inspected, unlike LA. They are verified, and there is no way that someone can claim they have it and avoid it. So those are some of the solutions that I see.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's good.
Marianne, did you have a comment?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Marianne King. I'm with the Chatsworth Neighborhood Council and on the Land Use Committee. And I'm going to go back to Laura Myers. I think she asked a really good question, which I think I know a little bit about, and that is, when a TOC project or a small lot subdivision comes into a neighborhood, is totally out of character, it gets appealed and everyone's frustrated because it's like no one's listening and it gets approved anyways. And so the rules are changing pretty fast. And what's really happening, I believe, in the city of Los Angeles is that the state has taken control of our land use. And so as some might be aware, the SB 9 and 10, especially SB 9, there was a very small, narrow focus on what you can appeal a project with now, and that is whether there's a specific adverse impact to health, public health, or public safety. And that has to do with, I think it's SB 35. So it's so confusing because a lot of Senate bills and Assembly bills have been approved, but our zoning code's not updated, so people get lost. It's like, what? So I just want to plant that seed for everyone. Pay attention to Senate bills and Assembly bills. And so what happened, just very quickly with SB 9 and 10, from my experience, is I saw it sitting in the Council Rules and Intergovernmental Committee for like 8 months. And there was like all these neighborhood councils had community impact statements, and it's just sitting there. It's like, what is going on? Meanwhile, it's being heard at the state level at the last hearing, the Appropriations Committee, and City of Los Angeles, the City Council never got to, weighed in on it at the very last hour, the 11th hour. So there was no formal position from the City of Los Angeles on SB 9 and 10, unfortunately. And it really, so that's another thing to keep an eye on too. When you've taken a position as a neighborhood council, my opinion, follow it through and make sure it gets heard. It goes through the city council committee and goes before the full city council if it's that type of bill. So all that energy isn't wasted, and just because as neighborhood council members, I understand we can't, as an advisory body for the city, go straight to our, senators or our, congressmen. We have to stay with a city council level. So, so I just wanted to share that. And this has been a great forum. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so the time is here and it's time for me to wrap up, but I have a few notes for you from our committee so that you have all the information. In the chat, you will find a link to the LA Planning Alliance and our calendar, which will link local land use committees and their documents. We are making a plan to address the timely response to our neighborhood council committees on entitlements within the park. We're making a plan to address the timely response to our neighborhood council committees on entitlements within the Department of City Planning. We need more residents on notices, entitlement, engaging our communities in our land use committees, responding to emails, and offering the details we expect from a well-educated and well-paid staff at City Planning. We're especially concerned with the housing element implementation of 2021 to 2029. We will be present as a voice at the table on these projects that challenge our neighborhoods and allow these voices to engage the planning department before decisions are made and to represent our appeals at planning commission hearings fairly. We are reaching out to our city planners to resonate with our communities, our streets, our neighborhoods, and our public spaces as individual communities that have equity and diversity within their population. We are proposing forming a community plan update working group as well, since the city is out of compliance with our plan updates. Draft processes and procedures ordinances that attempt to bypass our agreement will be fought with determination, and we will have due process in lawmaking and lawful empowerment for our homes and communities. We know that zoning is responsibility of the electorate and not determined behind closed doors. Attendees, check ZMAS and your local neighborhood council and get involved with your meetings, your representatives, and especially with the voices of your community. Without engagement, there will be a top-down declaration of what happens to your land. Do you realize it is up to you to engage your well-paid bureaucracy and push for more communication and engagement? Thank you to the LA Planning Alliance and LA Congress workshop panelists, Carrie Sutkin, Dick Platkin, Tom Williams, and Richard Larson. And I'm Judy Tang, moderating for this panel today. It's been a wonderful experience. Thank you for your patience. Love the questions, and I hope to see you guys again in a future event.